all of these other different startup terms that I had no idea about. So I guess you don't need to take a course, but read books, watch videos. I would definitely go take a course though on like what a startup actually is, because you can wing it like I did with solar and get by. But I mean, again, we sold it for a decent amount, but this cookie company, now that we've set it up correctly, definitely has 100x potential of what the solar company we had.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Bennett Maxwell. As a quick introduction to Bennett, so in high school, he was big into sports. He also got into selling different things to support his sports habit, which was playing sports, and so he got into doing that. And then he went and served a religious mission for his church in Mexico. When he came back, he got into started in door-to-door sales. So he started doing security systems and selling that. And then he also got into solar systems. Well, along that journey, he also bought a URL that was called Dirty Dough Cookies, thought it was a good URL. His brother was working in another cookie business, and so kind of had the inspiration from there. He bought a company in Arizona that was doing cookies while he was, I think, in California or Utah. I can't remember which, and ran it remotely for a period of time before deciding to make it into a full company. Did it in Utah and then started shipping it to stores for them to cook and sell. Grew the business, brought on a management team, opened up some franchises, also started a non-for-profit to help people with mental health through cookies, which who doesn't like cookies? So with that much as introduction and hopefully mostly accurate, welcome to the podcast, Bennett.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I just took a much longer journey and condensed it into the 30-second version. So let's unpack that a bit and tell us how your journey got started playing sports in high school and selling stuff to support your sports habit.
Yeah, growing up, I did football, wrestling, and rugby, and you have to pay for all of those. So if you don't have money, the other option is you sell things. So for football, it was to pay for football camp. It was like those discount cards. And then if you wanted to go to football camp, you'd have to sell a banner. So I was cold knocking businesses and saying, hey, who can sponsor, the Mountain View Bruins? And then in wrestling and rugby, we both sold cookie dough. So full circle from there. I had got into the door-to-door stuff and got interested in cookies in early 2019 because of Crumbl cookies.
Let's back up. So we'll definitely get to there, but to not jump too much of the present. So you did that in high school, kind of by necessity, maybe whether or not you wanted to be an entrepreneur. I have 4 kids, and my oldest son is 11, almost 12. And sports are already expensive, and it's like, okay, you have the actual sports, and then it's a competition or rec, and you have to buy all the gear, and maybe you do coaching, and maybe you do traveling. And so if you can afford it as a parent, great. And if you have 4 kids and they're having to figure out, especially as they get older, then you're going to have to figure out how to support that. And I give it applause that you figured out how to go and start doing those sales and be able to afford it so you could do what you enjoy. Now, I think after high school, you served a religious mission for your church. Is that right?
Yep. And I guess before that, I did my first real sales job, and it was a big mental shift for me. It was Cutco knives. And, I got all dressed up. This was, for the interview, whatever. And I got accepted to the job. I'm like super excited. And they're like, training starts next week. I was like, okay, how much do I get paid for training? And they're like, you don't get paid. I'm like, you want me to come work 40 hours for free? No. So I'm telling my dad, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to take this job. He's like, why not? And I'm like, this is a scam. They're trying to make me work 40 hours for free. Like, why wouldn't they pay me for that? This is a job, isn't it? And he's like, wait, this is sales training. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, there's companies and individuals that pay lots of money for sales training. If you can go get sales training for a week for free, you better take advantage of that. So that completely shifted my mindset. And then I went in as a student of sales, grateful for the opportunity rather than pissed. And I did well with Cutco, and that transferred over to religious mission as well. I mean, you're convincing somebody of your beliefs, right? It's sales, it's follow up, it's the exact same thing. So I was an incredible missionary. And then I came back, and here in Utah, everybody does door to door sales. This is the door to door sales capital of the nation for sure, probably the world. And jumped into that, but same thing. I'm just using the same skills that I learned and just building upon those. But I had the mentality of I need to be a sales expert rather than just a salesperson. Like if I want to make professional money, I need to put in professional time in studying. I mean, you have a law degree, right? That was
more school than I care to repeat, but yep.
So that's how I looked at it. I dropped out of college, and I was one semester away from graduating. I was doing pre-medicine. So I'd taken all the biologies and all the chemistries and all that, just had a few more classes. And then when I shifted over to full-time sales, I'm like, okay, I had planned to do at least another 4 years of college, to get, to become a doctor. So I'm going to put that same amount of effort, but into my sales career, and realize that I still need to educate myself. It's not just going out there and trying to figure it out, but it's really putting in the time.
No, and you hit on a couple things. One is, I think that if you ever entrepreneur, startup, or small business, you have to learn sales, whether you like it or not, because you're always in the sales business. And I don't care if you're an attorney and I do a law firm, and you think, well, you're in the legal industry. Yeah, I am in the legal industry, but I still have to do sales. I have to explain why you need a patent or a trademark. I have to walk through what it is. I have to convince you it's worthwhile for the investment. And I think it's a great product, but there's still certainly a sales aspect. And I'm not the only law firm out there. There are other ones out there, and I have to highlight the merits of why we're different and why we're better, and make a better process or a better product or service. And so I think that that's definitely a great and transferable skill set. And so now you did that a bit during, high school mission. Hopefully there's a little bit of a religious aspect that you're not the only one doing the sales, but you are certainly aiding in the sales process of bringing people into the Christ. And now you're saying, okay, I come back, and you get into the sales. And I think you mentioned you got into security systems and also into solar systems as far as kind of doing that as sales. And maybe this now jumping a bit to where you're at. And I think you mentioned why you were doing, those couple sales programs. You happen to buy a URL for selling cookies. Is that kind of what was the genesis or the motivation there?
No. So let me back up a little bit.
All right, back up and correct where I got wrong.
So the Dirty Dough was it. So I got interested in cookies because of Crumbl. Didn't want to buy a franchise though. I was making good money as a door-to-door salesperson. Would make multiple six figures in 4 or 5 months knocking doors. So I'm like, well, I don't want to give up that to go buy a franchise. I mean, I thought I could have both, but they have an owner operated model. So you have to own and operate it. That has to be your full-time thing. So I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to give up this other income. But that got me interested, and it got me excited about just franchising. Hey, I can get into be a business owner, but it's a preset playbook, right? Like I'm not all alone, but I'm still in charge. So it's kind of like a good entryway, and I was excited about that. But it didn't end up working out. I saw somebody that I went to high school with post on Facebook saying, I have a cookie company, and this was Dirty Dough. So he bought the URL.
Got it.
DirtyDoughCookies.com. Anyways, he was doing delivery only out of his apartment at Arizona State University, and he was looking for investment to open up his first retail, like brick and mortar store. So I jumped into that, like, oh, that's pretty passive, I just gave him money, and it was that. I just gave him the money. I was like, I'll help you when we franchise it. I'll sell franchises. But it never got to that point. So anyways, that's what got me interested in cookies. And then I became an investor. And then I ended up purchasing the company from them and then franchising it myself.
Got it. So now you said, okay, I'm going to, didn't work out, but when this is a kind of a curiosity. So you were at the time, you gave them some money, they were working at it. They didn't work out for them, or they weren't able to take it. But what made you decide, rather than kind of keeping with the selling the security systems or selling solar, rather to go and purchase a company and run it yourself or get into the cookie business full time? Or how did you kind of make that decision?
So I started my solar company with my brother in January of 2020. And this store opened up in March of 2020. Then Crumbl had opened up a store in San Diego. That's where I was living. in the summer of 2020, and it was killing it. Like they were lines out the door around the corner. So I'm like, we need to get a Dirty Dough store out here. I'll be your first franchisee. So I found my location. He said he was franchising, and the last minute he's like, I'm not going to franchise. I'm thinking about selling it. And I just listened to a podcast or something, and to truly reach wealth, financial freedom, not just have money, it's businesses and real estate. So I'm like, what, I own, I think I have like 7 properties right now. I have some real estate. Other than this one solar company that I'm running right now, I don't have any other businesses. So that's kind of pushed me over the edge. And then it was also a good opportunity. Like, I'm a business owner. I live out of state. I've never worked in food. If I can buy this company and make it work, then that's a good model. And that's the model I was looking for. So I was still running my solar company when I bought this. I did end up selling that solar company, but that was maybe 6 months after I purchased the cookie company. So I was doing both for a while at the same time. Again, if I can do it with no food experience out of state, and make it work, then that's a very good model that other people would also be interested in.
Got it. No, that definitely makes sense. So now you get into that, that business, and was it kind of everything you want? You bought the company, you were able to go out and sell, it took off like wildfire, you sold lots of cookies and it worked out perfectly? Or how did it go once you decided, okay, I'm going to buy the company and go all in?
Yeah. So it was, I wish it went perfectly. It seems like it's going good now, but I mean, we redid everything. If you look at the company and the store location we have in Tempe versus the one that we just opened up last week in Utah, the colors are different, the logo is different, the branding's different, the packaging's different, every single recipe is different. I mean, other than the name Dirty Dough, there's nothing that's the same, really. So we had to redo everything, and that was a lot of trial and error, a lot of time, and a lot of money to kind of figure out exactly how we were going to do it. Because when I purchased it, it was exactly what these other cookie companies are doing. And it was, you have to order your own ingredients. Then you have to train people to mix relatively small batches at a time. Then you have somebody manually grabbing the dough, putting it on a scale, and then putting little pieces of dough on that scale till it weighs just right. Then you're going to form it by hand, and then you're going to put it in the cooler until you bake it, a few days later. And lots of waste and lots of labor. So it was, okay, well, this isn't going to work. Like, I can't manage this remotely with this much waste and labor. How am I going to fix it? Then we went to, kind of other models out there, and looking at other cookie companies like Mrs. Fields. They do a centralized production. So that way the franchisees don't have raw ingredients, which means there are no raw ingredient waste. And the franchisees don't deal with mixing the dough. So there is no, oh crap, I messed up a whole batch, I have to throw it away. And there is no, I have to weigh this by hand. So that reduces the labor, and all of that reduces the square footage as well. So your ongoing costs are less. And your lease payments, your equipment payment, your equipment maintenance, all of that. So we copied kind of the Mrs. Fields back-end model, but these other cookie companies that had higher sales, they did these large, extravagant novelty item cookies, like a third of a pound, and they just are like multi-flavored. So we found a particular machine that would give us these crazy looking cookies, but it'll also allow us to do the centralized production model. So that took a lot. I mean, it took about a year. So when I bought the company, it was January. We officially franchised it in December. So it took a good 12 months to figure out the back end model and then franchise it. And several $100,000 as well of mistakes.
So now you say, okay, do all that. And I think that's, first of all, maybe, and not putting words in your mouth, but I think that any entrepreneur, you're going to get in there and there's a degree of naiveness. And I think it's probably good, because if you weren't naive, you would never get into it or you would never start your own startup or small business, because you would realize all the time and effort it's going to put in, all the risk and everything else. And so, I think when you get into it, you say, oh, I can, do these few things. It'll take this amount of money, this amount of time. And then I think 99% of people, you get into it and you figure out it takes more time, takes more money, and it always is going to be more involved than what you thought. But
Yep.
nonetheless, you get in there, you figure it out. You say, okay, I'm going to rebrand. We're going to do the, get some more conformity to it. We're going to figure out how to get the costs under control and be profitable and distinguish ourselves. So now as you're going through that, give us an idea over what period of time have you now been doing it, and kind of how is the company involved, or where is it at today?
Yeah. So we started franchising in December, and that's when I hired on a CEO. Her name is Jill Summer Hayes. She started a company in, I think, 1983 called Maui Wowie Smoothies and Coffee, and grew it up to just under 700 locations, and then sold it. So I'm like, let's hire people to where we want to be rather than where we're at. So we hired her. I started selling franchises kind of that same month. And since then, we've sold 65 franchises. The first one just opened up last week, 2 opening up in 2 weeks, and then 1 the week after that, and we're cranking them. So we're selling 10, 15 per month franchises, and then opening up a handful per month, and hoping to start ramping that up.
Well, that's awesome. It sounds like a great process. So now, and a great a great business. Now, as we kind of maybe can reach the present point of where things are at, and now we're looking a bit in the future. So if you're to say kind of the next 6 to 12 months, and I think it's, will be probably an interesting 6 to 12 months in the sense that we've got everything gone through COVID, gone through retail shutdown, people have gone more online. Now they have inflation, you have expenses going up and all of those things. And I think it gives, a lot of variability to what the marketplace is, and I think that or sometimes will present opportunities and not sometimes present challenges, in a combination of both. So now as you're looking at for the business the next 6 to 12 months, where do you see things headed?
Yeah, and the next by the end of the year, we'll have about 30 stores open. We're doing a little pause right now after we open up these first 5. The next month, we're starting construction on about 15 stores. Takes 2 to 3 months to build those out. So that gives us 2 to 3 months to work out any kinks that we need to work out as we open these first ones. So by the end of the year, should have around 30 open up, and then at least 5 a month, thereafter.
Well, cool. No, it sounds like a lot of progress to be had, and a good opportunity to continue forward. So now, as we've looked a bit as to where you're going out in the future, maybe one other question. I always have 2 questions I ask at the end of each episode, but I have one other, which is I always think it's kind of interesting because, in the sense, cookies have been around for a long time. Anybody can make cookies, and you can buy them at a bakery, a corner shop. You see now Crumbl coming along. You guys have got your own thing, and I think it's a very competitive marketplace, and you have to figure out how to differentiate or stand out. And so if you're to say somebody that's looking at a very whether there's cookies or anything else, how did you figure out how to distinguish or differentiate yourself so you could actually grow and build a business in something that's probably pretty competitive?
Yeah. So most cookies that exist out there are like a single flavor cookie, and it is very competitive. And then you have a lot of other cookie companies that came along. The big one being Crumbl, who copied other companies, but they did these giant cookies, and then they're doing all these sorts of decorations on top. So now it's a multiple. I mean, I had a cookie once that it was a waffle cookie, and it had like buttercream frosting, and they literally gave you a side of syrup to dip it into. So it's like, I have a cookie, I have frosting, and I have syrup, multi-flavored cookie. So what we did, we do 3-layer cookies. So you can look at a cookie and it looks like a peanut butter cookie because there's peanut butter dough on it. And then you break it open, there's chocolate dough. And then the very center, there's Reese's peanut butter, right? Or there's hot fudge. So you can have these 3-layer cookies, which don't exist anywhere else. And then it allows us, a very unique cookie experience for the customer. But on the back end process, as far as how do we distinguish, a franchise from another franchise, and why I think we're selling a decent amount of franchises, is because the margins are just so much better when you centralize all of your production. You get your ingredients at a high discount when you order a truckload of flour, sugar, butter, rather than a 50-pound bag, right? And then you don't have to go through third-party distributors because it's all going to one location. You go directly to the manufacturer. And then you don't have all the manual labor. You're mixing hundreds of cookies at a time instead of 50, 60. And then you don't have all the manual labor again of weighing them all and portioning them. You just run them through a machine. So as the competition, gets stricter, everybody sells, to one point, you're going to start, having to sell or share, I guess, your sales, and everybody's going to go down a little bit. Well, the more you go down, again, the bigger advantage we'll always have that competitive advantage because our costs are so low and our labor so low.
Interesting. No, and I like that, if I were to almost take away a lot of what you're saying there is kind of two things. One is that you figured out a way to be, I guess, innovative, so to speak, in the cookie industry, in the sense that you're doing something a bit different in the how you're doing the dough and layering it and making it a different taste and experience versus a normal cookie. And then I think the other one is paying attention almost to whether it's the operational side or the expensive side or how you manage it. And it's always interesting. You can have, companies that are in the same industry. One is well run, provides a good experience, manages their costs, and delivers on time and all those things, and they're killing it. And you'll have a company that has very similar products and yet will just sit there and almost die on the vine, because while they may have a similar product, they don't know how to manage it. They don't have to do the operations and the sales and everything else. So I think that was just an interesting insight. Yeah. So now with that, now as we do wrap or get towards the end of the podcast, I always have two questions I always ask at the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
When I purchased the company, I was part-time, right? Because I was running my solar company. So I had the brilliant idea of, what if I just get other partners that are also part-time? So we came on and there were 6 of us part-timers. And one person was the marketing, and one person was the finance person, one person was the ops person, I was the salesperson. And you can't grow a massive company part-time. There's just no if, ands, or buts about it. Like you just can't. So I think that we spun our wheels a lot. We didn't accomplish what we needed to accomplish. We wasted a lot of money because of my brilliant idea of, let's have 6 people come in here part-time, and then everybody's pointing fingers and, well, this person's not putting in the same amount of value as I am in this hour, Anyway, so that was a big mess, and I definitely learned out of that to never do that. If you're going to grow a business, and this comes from a really good mentor, and he's actually our senior advisor now, you have to be full in. You can't have distractions. You can't try to do, I'm going to go do 5 businesses. The people that do that have either the same team that's running all of those businesses, but typically they're running one business, growing it, selling it, then another business, growing it and selling it, but not growing 5 different businesses or even 2 businesses at the same time.
No, that definitely makes sense. So awesome. Well, great mistake to make, or a great mistake to learn from. Second question is, now, if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Go take a course on what a startup is. So I sold my solar company last June, so a year ago from this month, and somebody invited me to a course. It was called Startup Ignition here in Utah, and I'm like, I just grew and sold a solar company in 18 months. Like, what are they going to teach me? I didn't know anything. Like the first thing was the partnership, and my partnership was 50-50 with my brother. That was like within 10 minutes, it was like, look at this capitalization table. What's wrong? And it was 2 partners at 50-50. And it's like, you never do that. That's one of all these different things. And then I had all these partners. And what if one of them decided to step away and they own 20% of the business? Are the rest of us really going to grow the business knowing that he's going to have 20% of everything that we have? Because we've grown this and we've raised money at a good valuation already. I mean, from what we bought it to what we just raised money at it's already gone up 50x. So am I really going to let a partner that's stepped out of the business? So how do you mitigate that? Well, you do vesting periods, and all these other different startup terms that I had no idea about. So I guess you don't need to take a course, but read books, watch videos. I would definitely go take a course though on like what a startup actually is, because you can wing it like I did with solar and get by. But I mean, again, we sold it for a decent amount, but this cookie company, now that we've set it up correctly, definitely has 100x potential of what the solar company we had.
No, and I think that, and I would even expand it to whether it's a mentor, whether it's a course, but go and find or knowledge and consume information as to how to run a business, what's involved. And you're never going to be perfect. You're never going to have all the information. And I've run several businesses, continue to run one. And I don't know that anybody ever feels like they entirely have it figured out. And even once you feel like you kind of have figured out, then things change. But I think if you can get that information, you can understand what are the mistakes you should learn from, or what are the things that you should avoid, and what have others done, and what are those things that can get you farther down the road more quickly and farther ahead that you can avoid and you can make the business. I think learning, whether it's a course, it's a mentor, and or just be consuming of books and continually learning, I think is a great takeaway. Well, now as we wrap up the podcast, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
My website, it's bennettmaxwell.com. So BENNETTMAXWELL. And there's a little button, you can inquire about franchising, or you can follow me on social media. I try to post every day on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, try to put up as much value as I can out there, but that's definitely the best way to connect.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage everybody to connect, reach out, support a great company. We didn't even get to talk a little bit about your charity that you have going on there, but definitely check that out as well. And definitely a great opportunity all around. So with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you have your own journey to tell and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. We'd love to have you. A couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, and leave us a review. So we want to make sure that everyone finds out about all these awesome journeys. And last but not least, if you ever need help with your patents, your trademarks, or anything else with your startup, your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Bennett, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Awesome. Thank you.